Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are going to now start our keynote speech. My name is Nick Mastronardi. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at UB, and I'm very pleased to announce our speaker, Jeremy Prince, and he will be presenting the 4 keys to mastering and unlocking IoT expansion. Jeremy Prince joined the Sigfox corporate office headquartered in France as Chief Strategy Officer in 2018. In this role, he worked closely with Ludovic Limon, CEO and co-founder of Sigfox, on key initiatives and the company strategy. As part of the Sigfox Executive Committee, he was in charge of Sigfox Spain, Sigfox Germany, and Sigfox USA. In order to strengthen and accelerate the business in the US, Jeremy was appointed to president of Sigfox USA in 2019, while also remaining on the Sigfox Corporate Executive Committee. Armed with degrees in political sciences and economics and in international law, Jeremy started his career working for a press group before moving to the digital world, first internet, then mobile. He worked on 2 major successful IPOs, Index Multimedia and Seliger.com, before joining M6, which is one of the main European media groups. He spent 10 years working there, first as CEO of a joint venture in the digital field, then as director of all gaming activities, to finally hold the position of Secretary General of an in-house TV production company. After that, he was recruited by Technicolor as the COO of its subsidiary Micros before joining Sigfox. So again, we're very pleased to have you here today, and we look forward to a nice presentation. You can begin.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for attending, everyone. It's always a bit strange to hear about yourself, so let's move to the more interesting topic, being IoT and basically what we've called the 4 keys to mastering and unlocking IoT. To start with, and I know that most of you, if not all of you, are extremely familiar with IoT and probably a lot more technical than I am. But just to go back to what IoT actually is, and we can always come up here. I basically, and try to put it into simple words, we're all familiar with personal communication, phone, WhatsApp, whatever, and we're using loads of them in the current pandemic. IoT is basically taking it to a different level with getting the objects to communicate. So it does seem pretty weird, but basically it's extracting data from objects to use them, to optimize the way we use them, to optimize the processes, to optimize the logistics. And I think that arguably, but I am convinced about it, it's really starting to change our world and the way industries work to the point where I think it is a real 4th industrial revolution. I mean, every time there's a technology that makes a huge difference, it also totally changes the way we work, the way we produce, the way we communicate. And I think the last example that's very relevant is the internet. You're technical, but I'm sure some of you are also very business oriented. IoT has been seen as a huge market for years now. I mean, analysts have been coming up with very running projections for IoT, impacting many different sectors. As I said, analysts tend to sometimes go wrong. I believe it took more time than we expected to take off, but we're seeing now that it's really taking off, and I really am convinced that in fact it will be bigger than what people think. In the same way I was talking about internet just a few seconds ago, I'm sure when internet started, no one saw the potential of the Facebooks and Google, etc. And I think we'll see things like that. But if we stick to predictions today, and I've shared a few here, so that's McKinsey. It's a potential market of $4 to $11 trillion by 2025, according to their predictions. And if we look not at the money side of it, but more of the number of devices, you can see here that at the same date, 2025, analysts, so here it's IoT, are planning on something around 21 billion devices connected. So, as I said, I think it's absolutely massive. It's changing already the way we're working, we're producing, we're handling logistics, and it's only the start of it. And maybe to go into make things a bit more lively, I would like just to share a few examples of how IoT, because it's a very wide definition and it can be many different things. Basically, you could connect almost anything. And if you look today at some examples, so there I focused on E, and you can see here it's many different use cases. Garbage, you can package office optimize temperature monitoring. A water leak, are the street lights optimized, etc. Really, it can impact many different sectors. I tried to illustrate a bit further with some of the use cases that we have. So at the moment, of course, health is a big concern. We've already deployed solutions in Europe in temporary COVID hospitals because our technology is deployed. So there we're talking about a button person to call for some assistance. It's also all sorts of remote monitoring. We've got connected oximeters, etc. Just trying to give a few. Yeah, we moved to a total different sector, like tire supply chain. Work with Michelin on cleaners. To improve the ETA. Also, because you improve the ETA, you can also use less. You monitor as stocks. As a little anecdote, the first time they put a tracker, a Sigfox tracker in a container, I believe it was supposed to travel directly from Le Havre in France to North America. And by putting a tracker in it, they discovered that in fact it's 3 days, I think, in port in Netherlands, etc. So it's not good news for the logistic company, but very good news for Michelin. It seems like fun, but it's also a huge impact from production and cost point of view. Here you can see that they've significantly reduced the cost of inventories. Another example, and I'm trying to just very diverse use cases. IoT to really live up to hot water metering. Traditionally, it was all about sending someone. There's a much better way to do it by automating that, and then you get your water meter to communicate and to give updates on the consumption. It can also be used in different use cases. You can use the technology also to assess if there's a leak. By seeing abnormal consumptions, etc. It can also be used in the agricultural field to make sure that you are irrigating at the right level. So here also understand something to a totally different use case, and I could go on for hours on that, but I'll try. That's one of the beauties of different pain points, so many different industries.
Sorry to interrupt. Occasionally your microphone seems to be cutting out. I don't know if it's a hardware issue or if it's a connection issue. So we're not sure what's happening, but occasionally it just kind of cuts out to mute. Sometimes right when you change a slide, it happens, and then occasionally it happens at other points.
I'm sorry. So normally I've got a decent microphone, so maybe it's a bandwidth issue.
It might be. Maybe we could try momentarily. Maybe we can mute your video, and it may.
Yes, of course.
Even a little bit. Sorry about that.
No worries. You're not going to lose a lot by losing my video.
Yeah, we'll try again. And thank you.
No worries. I hope you didn't miss too much. So, as I said, very, very different industries, very different pain points to solve. Trying to give a few examples there. One that's quite interesting in the retail industry, shopping carts. In fact, nothing seems as stupid as a shopping cart, but in fact, even that becomes relevant from an IoT point of view. Number one, because in a lot of states in the US, it is compulsory for the retailers to keep their shopping carts on premises. Otherwise, they get fined. So they want to make sure that they keep track of where their shopping carts are to avoid those fines. But even from a stock management point of view, making sure that they've got the right number of shopping carts available in a given shop is also very important. And has a significant economical impact. So there we equip with a retrofit device some shopping carts with a partner called Bemis to track the shopping carts. How moving anymore? I'm sorry about that. Technology, here it is. Cold chain management, true for retail, true for restaurants, etc. So today, making sure from a food safety point of view that your fridges stay at the right temperature. It's, by the way, true for food safety, but it's also going to be a challenge. What about COVID vaccines today and about those vaccines staying at the right temperature to be effective? There also, you're going to have a huge logistic challenge. Number one, to make sure that you deliver in a timely manner hundreds of millions along the journey at the right temperature. So here also you've got a lot of things that can be done through IoT. So basically on your day-to-day basis, just making sure that food in your restaurant fridge stays at the right temperature, but also when you look at the COVID pandemic, making sure that you deliver the vaccines. Not going to go on for too long on all those. There are millions of them, and once again, that's what's all the fun of it, but trying to touch base on a different segment. Agriculture, tracking cattle. It does have a business impact, potentially because of, for instance, companies that own money to the farmers to buy cattle. So having a way of monitoring precisely and accurately how many cattle are actually there is interesting for the insurance company and allows them to lower the premiums also. So it's beneficial for both. We also can take the temperature of the cattle, and that's important because if you look at other pandemics, so like the mad cow disease, so being able to isolate the cow that's got a temperature might save your whole flock. So lots of benefits, and it goes from cattle to we're also getting strong traction in the cannabis industry, where it's legal, of course, to be able to track cannabis, to also make sure that you're optimizing production when you water the plants, etc. Another very, very important point, a very strong point, market loading in a positive sign, is tracking returnable packaging, because a lot of industries use returnable packaging to deliver goods, etc. And that returnable packaging itself has got a value, so it's important from a point of view, but it's also important to make sure that you get that packaging back. And there it's got different benefits, economical, logistics, etc. Last example, I believe, that I wanted to use, it is going down that line also. It's with DHL to track roller cages, to make sure that they know where their roller cages are and how many they've got. And they're also they implemented that solution, realized that they had roller cages in countries where they shouldn't be and that had been stolen, etc. But more seriously, it's all about ETA number 1 and number 2, making sure you've got the right number of roller cages in a given location, with a huge impact on the costs, of course, because once you optimize that, you don't have to buy more than needed, and it's a substantial saving. All that for me was basically before getting to the point of saying, what do we believe is necessary for IoT to deliver to the levels we all expect, volumes get to. I wanted to illustrate how diverse IoT could be, how many industries, how many can be impacted by IoT, and we could also go on down the B2C path with pet trackers, things like that. So, in fact, basically it's infinite. But what do you need? So first of all, what do you need? Well, you need a proven and reliable technology, and I just wanted to spend a second on what is Sigfox. Sigfox is today the world's largest wireless Internet of Things network, using what we call zero-G technology. We are today in 72 countries, and when we say we're in 72 countries, it's one network, so your device can travel seamlessly from one country. There's no roaming issue, etc. It's still communicating in the same way to the same cloud. That is very important. It's a technology that uses ultra narrowband modulation technology to transmit, so it's low frequency signals. Basically, it's using the good old radio technology that my grandfather already used in the First World War on a ship to develop a new market, IoT. What is also very important with this technology is that it's reliable, but it's also frugal. And frugal meaning it uses as little energy as possible, and we'll see later on why this is important. Just basically, the other thing that you need, of course, to be successful in IoT is not only the technology and activity, it's a whole ecosystem. For IoT to work, you need to have a whole ecosystem that ranges from designing the devices with some distribution devices. You need the key to convey the data that you've extracted, but then you need to deliver it to a platform, to a solution provider, to come up with the information that the final customer is looking for. So when you think of IoT, you've got to think ecosystem. You've got to think a whole value chain. But then to go back to the initial topic of this keynote, how will IoT meet analyst predictions? And although I've been going through quite a few slides to illustrate what IoT is and the different segments it can address, and once again, it was a very limited view of that. There are many. I'll only share one slide for that, but I'm going to elaborate a lot. Today, for me, arguably, the 4 keys to go massive are here. You could basically connect anything. I could connect my pen if I wanted to connect my pen. The question is, do I do it in an efficient way and it makes sense, ROI point of view? And today, the number one question for IoT is what we call the overall TCO, so the cost of extracting the data, the total cost of ownership. The lower that cost is, the more opportunities are there. So if I go back, I was talking earlier on about the DHL example where we connect roller cages because a roller cage itself is worth $200 to $300. So it makes sense to put a tracker that's worth a few tens of dollars and to pay for connectivity to track it. Stick to DHL, and now imagine what happens if you can lower the cost of the device. And our ambition is to get to devices, to enable the productions of devices, because once again, we're a very frugal technology that allows you to come up with devices that don't cost a few dollars, but cost a few cents. And that for us is the end game. Today we're at $1. I think the less expensive devices we have that are produced by device manufacturers are $1. Get to a few cents. Stick to DHL. Now you've got a return on investment that is not only for the roller cages, and that's hundreds of thousands, but you get to a potential return on investment for tracking even mail deliveries. And we've already got some prototypes where, in fact, you just need the opening of the envelope, ripping the envelope, generates sufficient energy to trigger a message. So there you're moving from a few 100,000 roller cages to billions of potential parcels. And I mentioned briefly energy. Well, energy for me is the second key. So the first key is the overall cost, but the second key is energy. Energy, number one, because it is also linked to cost because of battery optimization, etc. But also because when you're looking at something massive, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of devices, if not millions of devices. And you don't mind having to charge your mobile phone once a day or several times a day if you're a heavy user, because you've got one mobile phone, maybe two. But when we're talking about huge quantities of devices, then having to maintain those devices, having to recharge those devices becomes a burden, becomes a cost. Also, predictability, and our technology allows you to predict the lifetime of a battery is very important. We were mentioning containers. I mean, you don't want the container device to run out of battery in the middle of the ocean, otherwise you totally lose the point, miss the point. So cost is important, energy is essential, energy consumption is essential. The other thing, if you're looking at being global, and that's also, I think, one of the keys to unlock real massive IoT. You need to be global. I mean, when you talk to big customers, those big customers that have huge volumes, they're not mom and pop stores, they're multinational companies. And those multinational companies, by essence, they have business in all over the world. And for them, it's important, if not essential, to be able to have a proven technology that works in the different countries where they operate. And when I say it works, it's not only it works, but it works in the same way. And also from a cost point of view, they don't want to go through the headache of what does it cost me if my trailer leaves Mexico and moves to the US. Am I going to have to go, well, if they use a lot of technologies, either it won't be possible, or they're going to have to go through the whole painful roaming experience with the costs associated, etc. And when you're looking at multinational companies, they can't factor in that. Well, if if they want to make projections, if they want to have a secured P&L for that, they need to make sure that they know where they're going. So having a technology and a pricing model that's simple, where you know that you're going to pay this per year, wherever your device goes, you know that you're going to access the data in the same way wherever the device is. That for me is also essential to the IoT market going huge and addressing those pain points for multinational companies. And I think that's a third key. So we were talking about costs, we were talking about energy. I think being global is also a very important key and a very important concern for those huge companies. And linked to all that, I think it also needs to be simple. You need a technology where it's not all about pairing, getting IoT, IT teams heavily involved, etc. You need what I would call a turnkey solution. You need a technology where you just put the device wherever it needs to be, set it up, turn it on, and it starts communicating. And you start seeing the data. You don't want to go through the pain of complicated pairing. You don't want to go through the pain of setting up your own proprietary network. You don't want to go through all those pain points. So sometimes it's relevant. Sometimes you might want to go down that route. But honestly, when we're talking about massive IoT, and that is what this whole keynote is about, if you want to go massive, you've got to be simple. And I'm not saying there aren't other use cases where you don't care about the energy consumption, where you don't care about the overall cost. I mean, if you're looking at an autonomous vehicle, let's say, you don't mind if it's going to be that expensive, because anyway the car itself is very expensive. Energy won't be that much, energy consumption won't be that much of an issue because it's a car and it's powered, etc. So there you can go down a different route. But when you're looking at massive IoT, I think it's crucial that you address those 4 points. So cost, energy, global, simplicity. And I think if those 4 keys are unlocked, then IoT will even be bigger than what analysts expected. So they might have been a bit wrong anticipating the ramp up. It took more time than they expected, and it's only happening now, really. But hopefully they'll also be wrong in assessing the size of the market. I think it can be bigger than that. And now I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And as I mentioned, I know that there's a very technical audience here. I am not an engineer, so I will not be able to go into too much details regarding technical issues.
All right. Thank you very much for the nice talk. I apologize for the small amount of technical issues. Once we turned off your video stream, it seemed to work mostly with a few glitches here and there. So I will, let's see. So I have a question from the audience. Ankush asks, what would you say are the key benefits of Sigfox when compared with other technologies like LoRa or narrowband IoT?
Okay, so first of all, I'll take one step back because I've seen, I've read a very interesting article about IoT and IoT being seen as a red ocean versus a blue ocean. So when I don't know how familiar the audience is with those notions, but a red ocean basically, and to oversimplify, is a market where the fish need to kill each other to survive. And that's why it's red, because of the blood. And a blue ocean basically is a market where there's place for the different fish. And I know that people tend to see IoT as a whole, and I hope, as I already slightly illustrated during my presentation, I think there are a lot of different use cases, a lot of different segments in IoT that probably mean that it's more of a blue ocean than a red ocean. But then to go back to, and that is if you target the right segment, the right use case related to the technology. And as I said, Sigfox will never do autonomous vehicles. But now if I go to the question, if I go back to the question, and we've still got the four keys on screen, and I think that they are part of the answer. Low energy, so I think that Sigfox is the only technology where you can predict the lifetime of the battery, because number one, by essence, because our messages are very small messages and our technology uses radio, we use very little energy per message. Plus, what takes a lot of energy, and to go back to the example of your phone, but it's true for a lot of IoT technologies, what takes a lot of energy consumes a lot of energy is the pairing, the constant pairing. So if you look at your mobile phone, in fact, your mobile phone is constantly pairing with the closest tower. So basically it's saying, hey, network, I'm here, and the network is sending a message saying, okay, I acknowledge you're here. And when you put your phone in flight mode, you see suddenly that your battery seems to last forever compared to usual. Well, Sigfox is not about pairing. Sigfox is about the network listening to the devices. So when the device wakes up, and most of the time he doesn't communicate, he's asleep, he's only told when has to communicate. So let's say it's temperature monitoring, so we tell him he needs to communicate, 5 times a day, or it's event driven, there's been a shock or a problem with the temperature. But then the rest of the time it does not communicate, so that means it doesn't use any energy, so your battery is fine. And when it does communicate, it's not pairing, it just it broadcasts a message that is received by different base stations around. So energy is a very strong advantage. The overall TCO, so the cost, when you look at and once again, we don't manufacture devices. So there's an ecosystem, and they manufacture devices. But from what we see, Sigfox-enabled devices tend to be a lot less expensive than other technology devices using other technologies. So cost is important. Also, our connectivity costs are very low. Simplicity. Once again, due to what I described about the devices not pairing, etc., and the benefit of a public network, in fact, there's no pairing. You just need to turn on your device and it starts communicating. So simplicity is here, and you don't need to run your own network. It's a public network, and also global network. We're in 72 countries. Growing constantly, and once again, in every of those countries, it's the same network, you're communicating to the same cloud, you get your data in the same way. So that's why I believe our technology is very well suited for massive IoT. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you very much. I have a couple things. So I want to mention anyone who does have questions from the audience, please make sure to input them into the Q&A. In the meantime, I can ask a couple questions from my own head. So you mentioned, so a lot of these devices these days, with respect to low energy, they're consuming so little energy that they may, you could potentially have a device that lasts for 2 years or more, which may actually outlast the useful life of the battery before the battery itself degrades. Are there any solutions or things that Sigfox is working on related to that? You mentioned already that you could harvest, it sounds like, the energy from opening an envelope to trigger transmission. But I'm wondering if there are other things to keep these devices alive for a long time.
So first of all, 2 years is even an understatement, because we have seen there are some devices where the lifetime can be 10 years, and the predicted lifetime is 10 years, and to go back to the energy, yes, we're constantly working with device manufacturers on how you lower the energy consumption, how you tackle the battery issues, and it's something that's done in coordination with device manufacturers. That I've also seen some prototypes where you mainly can power devices just by plugging them into a potato, so that's not easier than a battery. but saying that we're working, you can also probably at some stage use other energies like solar energy, etc. So I don't know if that answers your question, sorry, but
yeah, I think it does. If you can bypass the need for a battery that is kind of degrades over time.
And you can't do it in every case.
Yeah.
But there will be at the end of the day. I mean, the envelope is a good example. And honestly, it's even, I mean, some watches just generate sufficient energy with the movement and you don't need a battery in your watch. And I think we're a very frugal technology, and that's the way that the R&D, etc., is going. It's how to minimize the battery use. And it's also down to the use case. I mean, if you just want, that's the good also example of the envelope. You just want to know when it's delivered and opened. You just need to send one message. Of course, it's a bit different when you want to have a device that's going to send regular updates, etc.
Right, yeah, thank you. So we have another question from the audience. They ask, if you are hoping to eventually track individual packages, are you at a point where you are specifying biodegradable or disposable devices from your manufacturers? Do you have any comment on the potential waste stream for billions of small IoT devices?
So my first comment is I agree that there is a strong environmental potential impact in every technology, and IoT being one. It's something that we try to tackle. Number one, I think that the battery part, because a lot of the impact also comes from the battery. So I think all the efforts we're doing from an energy point of view are important. But once again, at the end of the day, and I just want to make that point very clear, we do not design devices for the end customer. We're not manufacturing devices. So yes, we're trying to push towards a frugal technology. Yes, we're trying to work closely with device manufacturers so that they go down that path, but we're not the ones that at the end of the day design the devices. And I think we've got to be very honest. I do not believe that there will be a technology, and IoT or other technologies, by the way, that will have that won't have any impact. So then it comes down to the question of what's the trade-off, what's the cost, the environmental costs, and what is the benefits? Because yes, there is like packages, but then maybe it also has an impact because you're going to have a better ETA, because you're going to improve the logistics, you're going to use less transportation, etc. Because of IoT, you're going to use less water in agriculture, etc. So at the end of the day, there is an environmental cost. We try to minimize it. I think our technology is very frugal, but we shouldn't not acknowledge it. But at the end of the day, it's the overall equation that makes it beneficial or not.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a great question, or a great answer. And coming back to this question of logistics, you started the presentation with a bunch of nice examples of where this technology can be used for tracking things, anything from a shopping cart to the cold chain management to the cattle tracking. So how much, does it cost, or how much time does it take for maybe some business to adopt this technology? Obviously, the individual devices appear to be very cheap, but I think there may need to be some overall infrastructure in place for them to do this. So can you speak at all to that?
Yes, of course. I think that number one, the big, and for me, the biggest concern and the way we like to approach our customers, we really, first of all, before we go down that route, we've got to be very clear on the pain points that we're trying to address, the costs associated or not, but a lot of it's quite often related to costs that are linked to that pain point, and what is the expected outcome. Because I like to say that IoT, taking a new, especially technical teams from a customer, starting a discussion about IoT is a bit like bringing a kid in a candy store. You can do so many things. You can, as I said, you can almost connect your pen. And like when you bring a customer in the IoT store, he wants to do everything. But is everything worth it? No. Everything, you've got to be very selective, be very clear on what you're trying to achieve. So that's the first crucial point. Then when you go down the route of how much time will it implement from an infrastructure point of view, etc., well, with Sigfox, that's not really an issue because, as I said, we're a public network, so you might need some densification, setting up a few extra base stations in the location, etc., but that's very easy and that's very quick. Once again, we operate the network and the cloud, so there's no big step to be taken there. You just need to turn on the device and it's going to start communicating. So I would say that the biggest things is, number one, you've got to be clear on what you're trying to achieve, the benefits you're looking for. Then, of course, you've got to work on the platform and the front end, what you want to see, how you want to see it, etc. But then that can take a bit of time. But then the other crucial point would probably be when you're looking at massive deployment, it's just a lead time to producing the devices and delivering the devices. That can take time. But honestly, if today you're very clear on what you want to achieve, it's a clear use case that we know well. And let's say today we're talking you're a university. We've just started working with a university in the US because they want to monitor CO2 levels. So it's not really, the idea is, why do they want to monitor CO2 levels? Because if you monitor CO2 levels in the rooms, you know if the air has been renewed, and that's very important, especially nowadays in the COVID pandemic context. So they're implementing those sensors in every classroom, etc., to make sure that the students and the staff are safe from that point of view. Well, the device exists. We just need to add a few micro base stations, and that's a very limited cost, and it's plug and play. So basically what we're saying there, and the platform already exists to visualize that with a partner. So tomorrow, if in your university you want to implement such a solution, it's a matter of a few weeks to implement it. If you're looking at implementing new devices, producing new devices, hundreds of thousands of devices, then it's the lead time to produce those, to actually manufacture and deliver those devices and install them.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. We have maybe time for just one more question from the audience that's already here. So the question begins, both Sigfox and LoRa use unlicensed spectrum. though this is an economical solution, but there may be some disadvantages because of this. So for example, is there anything we're doing compromising the security of the network by using unlicensed spectrum?
Oh, no. On the contrary, well, number one, we use unlicensed spectrums because we're using that radio technology with all the benefits that I described. But also, and I'd be happy to follow up. I mean, feel free to connect to my LinkedIn and ask questions if you want to go into the details. But I would say that by essence and by design, Sigfox is more secure than most technologies. To illustrate my point, and that's due to the number one, the fact that our devices are not pairing, are not connecting, so you can't get into the devices and you can't hack them, or it's a lot more difficult. Same thing for base stations, etc. And once again, I'm not technical, so I'll be happy to follow up with whoever wants to go into more details. But no, it's extremely secure. And to illustrate my point, in fact, we've got a major contract with Securitas Direct in Spain. So that's the biggest home alarm company in Spain and Portugal. And they've implemented Sigfox in all their home alarms that are traditional home alarms using GSM, because you need to communicate video and photos and sound, and that's not what Sigfox does. But they still implemented Sigfox because, in fact, it's very easy to hack or jam Wi-Fi, GSM, etc. So they put Sigfox because now their claim is that it's the only home alarms solution that can't be jammed or hacked.
All right, that's very nice. We're approaching very close to the end. I'm wondering, there was one last question that maybe if you could take just 1 minute to answer. Do you find that there are any classes of problems that people want to apply or use IoT to solve, but perhaps it's not the right solution?
The IoT is not the right solution. I believe there are lots of them, probably, to go back to my example of a kid in a candy store. I wouldn't say there are classes, but I think every use case needs to be looked into really thoroughly. And that's what usually we do with customers. And it does happen that sometimes we tell a customer that, no, it's not worth it at this stage. And maybe it will become worth it when the costs go down, et cetera, et cetera. So, no, I don't have a generic response. I would just say that every segment needs to be looked into and analyzed thoroughly.
All right, great. Thank you. So thank you very much again for the great presentation and the Q&A. I think you're free to stop sharing your screen, and I will be passing this on to the next session chair. Xiaofeng Zhu is here, and you can go ahead and start your session.